is Role Playing Public Radio, RPPR episode 80, Good Clean Fight. This is Ross Payton, and with me, as always, my co-host, Tom Church.
Nope, that voice was different somehow. You altered the announcer voice somehow.
I'm always perfecting and fine-tuning the announcer voice.
It seems like you're trying to talk deeply from your throat this time. But while not taking a breath.
I'm always trying to up my craft, Tom. I'm not.
Well, you're not. You're not. Well, you're not going up.
Like some co-hosts, I'm not wanting just ready to be stagnant and just be okay with what I'm doing.
Should I change it up too or something?
Well, I'm just saying.
Like, hello, Ross. Top of the morning to you. You having fun?
See, now you're not even trying. You're just making fun of the whole practice and making better improvement. Anyways, we should get on with the episode. This episode is going to be about combat and how to...
Ross and I were fighting at that point.
Yes.
It's a form of combat.
Well, we're not talking about social combat or social conflict. We're talking about
the actual good old violent kind.
Yeah, the kind where you try to make the other person...
not live.
Have to rely on Obamacare.
Oh, whoa!
In the brutal dystopian future that is the socialist America.
It's like when healing is free.
Yes.
No more paying the clerics to heal your body this time.
Freaking, church entitlement programs.
Obamacare and D&D.
Yeah, healing potions for all. Anyway, so in this episode, we're talking about fighting. Combat, how to focus on it, how to make it an interesting one, what's a bad fight, what's a good fight.
Because I'm sure, anyone who's role played has had both. You've had a really cool fight, and you've had the fight that just rolls like an egg. It's excruciating. Yeah.
So I mean, what? Yeah. But anyways, first off, I do want to get a bit of news out of the way, and that would of course be Base Raiders, the RPPR Kickstarter for the superpowered.
Ross is so proud of you.
Yes.
You made it a success.
Yes, it is officially funded. We are at now $9,560
as of this taping.
As of this recording,
I'm pretty sure by the time it goes out, we're going to be at 28,000.
Yeah, right. It's just going to shoot up. All the secret celebrity RPPR listeners out there just gonna make it a huge...
Yes, because the Koch brothers are listening as we speak. Well, I was like, I love this guy.
Well, I mean, the Michelle Obama is one of our listeners, and John Boehner and all those other people, and so the secret
George
media,
Soros,
Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, obviously a big listener.
George Soros,
so Bill Gates. Anyway, so we're at the third stretch goal right now for the project, which is we now have there will be conversion guides for Wild Talents, Mutants and Masterminds, and Savage Worlds after the main game is released. So the main game, again, the plan is to have it printed in July so I can send it out to everybody, and of course have the PDF sent out to everybody and all the backers. And then after that, I will get started on the conversion guide. I want to make sure I get the actual game out before I get the conversion guide started. I have had offers of help from some people, so to help fine-tune, make the rules. So I'll try and get those pretty quickly after the main game is out. But the next stretch goal at $11,000, which I think we can make because we have,
a couple weeks
It'll
left.
Be November 24th before the Kickstarter ends. So we've got some time, and that will be the Zombie Factory, a new chapter for the book, which will be a base. Actually, it's a base on the front cover. You've seen the front cover, Tom, with the big scary zombie monster Hulk thing, and the.
And I'll tell you, my first reaction: gasp! Zombies. That is so new.
Who would have thought that?
I know, you of all people.
And I really made the most original thing of making them on superhero zombies. So you can find out the real story behind the Zombie Factory.
Wait, tell me one thing. That zombie's not actually attacking them, but it's offering them a delicious sandwich or something, right?
Yeah, sure, Tom.
That's how I'm going to write it in my journle.
Okay, well, you do that.
Dear Diary, that zombie is totally not deadly.
And if we do get to 18,000, which is still possible, Caleb will release Leviathan Prison or we'll put Leviathan Prison, which has been featured in the Heroes of New Arcadia campaign as a new base. And so there's a lot of content to be added on the stretch goals now. If we don't meet those stretch goals, I mean, I still have that content outlined or ready to go, so we can do. I think my plan right now is after we get this done, we'll do at least one or two Kickstarters for supplements for Base Raiders sometime down the line, obviously after the main game is out or nearly out. So supplements including power sources for characters, for player characters, more bases, obviously. and we'll just see what kind of reception Base Raiders gets in the role playing game community. So
we answer this question like, so who would control those super formulas? Would it be the FDA?
Well, I actually posted an excerpt from the main book talking a little about super soldier drugs, which is what they sort of categorize any sort of chemical or drug power source, something that gives you superpowers. And the way I have it structured in the book is there are 6 main formula families, and there are hundreds of super soldier drugs, but each one of them is almost always a variation on one of the 6 main formulas. And they're all basically extremely illegal. And even during the Cold War, not before the superheroes and villains disappeared, they were even banned for military use, although there were, of course, unofficial...
Because militaries never do any illegal things.
Yeah, exactly. So, because they were afraid of, arms races, and they thought more superhumans were bad, even, so it was better to have a few vigilantes and villains running around rather than... legions of super soldiers, because that would just be bad for society. So
weak need liberal whining.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I set up in Base Raiders right now is, since all the heroes and villains are gone, some pharmaceutical companies and defense contractors are beginning to lobby Congress, everything like, hey, let's make these legal for special use. We can use these super soldier drugs for good, and profit, which are...
Because when you bring profit into it, everything's nice and fair and balanced.
So that's an excerpt on the Base Raiders website that you can read, talking a little bit about those drugs. And I described two of the 6 formulas. And so, yeah, we're sort of, I'm working on the book right now, obviously, and I'm very excited about it. So that's sort of the Base Raiders update. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to post them on the Kickstarter or on the forums or wherever, or the Facebook group, and I'll get them answered. So I think that kind of covers the news.
It's good news.
So yeah, exactly. Thank you again, everyone who's backed the project. I am very it's really good knowing internet strangers really like me.
It's like, when the revolution comes, Ross will spare you.
Yeah, right. So yeah, keep that in mind. Anyways, so combat. Combat's really the heart of almost every RPG.
It really is. That's usually in every role playing supplement book I've ever seen. That's the longest chapter.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, even if you're not doing a combat-heavy game, that's the most complex type of conflict you can do, usually. Mm-hmm. So it deserves the most rules. And
it's what most role players are really looking for, because most of what they want to do... Most role players are trying to, in some way, do something more fanciful than their average day-to-day life.
Well, not in horror games. Then it's like, oh god, why am I here?
I said in most, and they want to be badasses.
Yeah, well,
very few people eagerly want to be a scared human who's devoured by something beyond space, which is why our group's so awesome. It's loaded with people that have no problem with that.
Well, I think the thing is with combat, it's also one of the heart. I think it's not just that. I mean, that's certainly a part of it. It's also because you go back to role playing games' roots. And role playing games are from the rules for those came from war games originally. So and the culture came from wargaming culture. And then the other side of it is that role playing games are almost always based on genre fiction. That is, what do we have? Fantasy, science fiction, military, and horror,
spies.
Espionage,
spycraft,
thrillers. Okay, but I mean, really, the mainstays are sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. I mean, especially fantasy.
Yeah.
And what are the heart of all those stories? I mean, combat.
Fighting.
I mean, yeah, fighting. And because Lord of the Rings. I mean, yeah, sure. The page count is probably not as much as the D&D campaign, but you can't have Lord of the Rings without fight scenes, without battle scenes. So that's just
Let's be honest, that'd be awfully boring.
Right. So there's a lot to be said. It's kind of in the DNA of everything that makes up role-playing games. So,
but I would also say, like most DNA, it can occasionally get damaged and become cancer.
Okay. Well,
you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally.
The thing, the problem
bad
with combat. Yeah, the bad combat, the cancerous combat, if we're going to call it that, is there's sort of two extremes that you often see in tabletop games, especially in bad con games or in.
And I can assure you, Ross and I have seen both.
I've been in games like that.
So have I.
Yeah. And the first one is, the Final Fantasy 8-bit syndrome, where
there's you and then there's your enemy.
Yeah.
They're somewhere on the terrain.
Yeah.
And,
and it's literally the terrain. It's just this abstracted
and you swing your sword or shoot your spell.
Or even the guns, like I shoot him, he shoots me. You keep,
but because most most actual fights go like that. You're standing up, in the middle in this open area, shooting until one of you falls down.
Oh, I got shot for 18 damage points in my spleen.
Well, it's a good thing I had armor on, so it did not do as much damage.
Yeah. So there's that. So that's I think you see that a lot, even in 3.5, like even in 3rd ed and 4th ed D&D. A lot of times, what you see is even when they have the tactical grid, and the map and the miniatures out, what happens is like people start on this side and the other people start on this side, and then they move into the middle, and then they never fucking move after that.
Yeah,
unless there's a
they just do it until one side just dies because that's why I think you're so beautiful with your combats, Ross. You know what they do sometimes?
What?
Sometimes when when the bad guys are losing, they withdraw.
Yeah.
They actually retreat.
Yeah. How
insane is that?
I know. It's
because when one side is in a pitched combat and realize the advantage has been lost, most armies just say, never mind, we're men, we go forward. we suffered 80% casualties, but I think we can take them.
80's not 100.
That's right.
We got 20% left. I think I think we got it in us. I think we tired them out.
I think even orcs would realize, hey, we're getting our butts kicked here.
Yeah.
Think we should go? It's essentially it's just a cluster in the center of the map, and it's just
it's very static. It's very static. I mean, there's very little movement, very little of the sort of the fluid chaos that you would see in really good fight scenes. So that's one extreme. But on the other, to remedy that, a lot of game systems have come up with what they call cinematic combat rules. Flare stunts, and there's also a lot of variants, subsystems, and new rules
style versus substance, all that kind of thing.
And like Iron Heroes, which I've been running lately, you have the stunt mechanic where you describe what your character does, sort of a freeform thing, and then you roll for it. And the problem, I think, the thing is, what I'm beginning to see now a little bit is you can go too far with that. I mean, it's good to add some interest to combat, but combat can get so complex that it bogs down and just falls apart and becomes this incoherent mess. I mean, say what you want about the 8-bit fight. You're here, he's there, and you whack away until someone's hit points are 0. But at least you know what everything is, what's going on. But if you're like, I jump over his head and then spin around and do a cool backflip, and then I pull my gun out and I say a one-liner, I put my sunglasses on, and then I, do the splits, and then I...
Eventually the GM's kind of like, oh, whoa, slow down.
Yeah. And the problem with the stunt thing is I attack him, but I twist my sword around and I really make it hurt. Do I get plus 10 damage for that, right? There's so you want to stab him, but you want to do it better.
Basically, I'd like to do more damage than I actually do.
Yeah, without any penalty, So that's the other problem with I see a lot of times with cinematic combat rules are the kind of, I want something for nothing, or I want to be super badass and I just want to win. Where's the I win button? So the question is, how do you make fights that are good, that are between those two extremes, and
where, not just graph paper and not every movie you've ever seen. Yeah.
Well, and another thing about the incoherent mess, it may not be, people min-maxing or, trying to squeeze out as much benefit as they can out of the stunt rules while ignoring the spirit of the stunt rules. The other part of the incoherent mess is literally just bogged down and you can't understand what the fuck's going on.
Basically, it's bogged down with flair.
Well, no, I think like Phoenix Command is the ultimate example, but where you have windage and shit like that. But like a lot of RPGs, you just get bogged down. I don't know what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we run into that with new systems like Eclipse Phase. That happened, especially early on before we really got into it.
Right.
Even in fourth ed, that happens, especially towards Epic. When you have a shitload of dailies and abilities and blah blah blah.
And
blah.
it is people were bringing in index cards that had all their abilities and what they did on them.
And I mean, it wasn't so bad up until Epic tier, I think. So maybe high Paragon, but
yeah,
I don't know.
But it's all. I mean, yeah. I think it's all. Another thing with combat is you kind of have to make it. I think it's it should be a goal to try to make it where it's not where you just wait until your turn comes up again.
That's true too. That's another. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I see that a lot, even at the RPPR table, where people just, if it's not their turn, they don't pay attention, and they don't give a fuck what happens.
I think everyone's guilty.
Yeah,
but I think during some games it was worse. I think during the later stuff of the New Arcadia game, not New Arcadia,
New World.
New World. Thank you.
Yeah.
New World. That was especially like those
How could you
huge
get those names
fights.
mixed up, Tom? They're so different.
So different. Yeah, I know. But but there's so. I mean,
Horrible.
like people were just just waiting for their turn, and
yeah.
At one point, most of the players were doing that.
Yeah, especially again, I think of the Lich fight. At the last fight we actually did in the New World campaign, where the Lich had a fucking 1,000 hit points, and you guys were just doing 50 hits.
I mean, it's eventually fights like that. It can become just a grind.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And there's really nothing you can do about that, other than just sit and suffering. So that's sort of the problem. So that's another problem too, is boredom. How do you keep everyone engaged? So, in general, I think the best fights have to occupy a sweet spot in not just in every area. There's the amount of rules, like you can't be too simple and you can't be too complex. In the type of enemies you have. And the terrain and sort of what I like to call the theme of the fight, which I'm going to just not, and by theme, I'm not meaning like this is about love or this is about honor, or this is about 19th century colonialism.
Or 18th century Prussian agricultural.
Yeah, exactly. What by theme I really mean more like the tactical concept. What is in video games, there's always that stage that's like designed to show you some new game mechanic, like that's so like I think good tabletop RPG fights have a tactical concept.
Yeah. It puts me in mind of I believe it was Half-Life 2. Look, we have a physics engine.
Yeah.
And we're going to make you use it.
Okay, well, the thing about Half-Life 2 is actually just got really phenomenal, and Half-Life 1, they both have really great level. They have really great design. Because, I mean, yeah, they show you the physics engine, but that's because they teach you this lesson, and then later on you have to apply it. And then they make you combine stuff. I mean, all the Valve games are really good about that. And that's actually, you could learn a lot from Valve's game design and apply it to your tabletop games because, in Portal, they show you this one basic concept. And then they say, okay, here's concept A and here's concept B. And now you have to apply both of them and then learn an entirely new concept all at once.
And there's a potato.
Yeah. So the tactical concept, what is a tactical concept? For me, the easiest one is boss fight.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what when I say boss fight, what do you think, Tom?
The big bad thing suddenly showing up.
So how is that different from a normal fight?
Usually it's in, well, first of all, the number of things you have to fight.
Yeah.
Occasionally a boss will have little minions too.
Yeah. But those minions aren't going to be super bad.
It's basically, you think is okay, this is first of all, first thing I think is, all right, this is the end of this section.
Yeah.
This is basically, everything's led up to this.
Yeah.
For the last adventure. So here's where we finish it out. And it's usually something bigger than us.
Yeah.
Something that one of us cannot possibly take on alone.
Yeah.
So it's something we actually have to have the whole group for.
So yeah, so now there's a new lesson. Teamwork takes this is emphasizing teamwork,
which I have discovered a lot. Sometimes our group isn't very good at that.
Sometimes
I'm being generous. Right. I'm being really generous.
Fair enough. So the boss fight has its own unique tactical concept, and it makes a memorable fight when it's done right. Now, obviously, that can be, if you don't do it right, a boss fight can still suck. If it's like Sacco hit points, we have to whittle away.
Where you can actually tell that, it can't inflict that much damage on you, but it has 1,000 hit points.
Yeah.
When you realize you're oh, good God. And you can actually, I think that's where some of the boredom sometimes comes from for those really long fights. Yeah. It's oh, for fuck's sake, can we just kill it?
Yeah, exactly. It's you play a game of Monopoly and you realize that fucker who got Boardwalk and Parkway, he's going to win because he landed.
But it's
on
not
this.
going to happen right away.
It's gonna take fucking forever to grind away.
when he finally gets enough money to build up the houses.
Yeah, and then he's just gonna
then you're just
bankrupt.
waiting for someone to land on it.
Yeah, who's gonna fall on the executioner's block first? So that's kind of the thing. So that's a crappy boss fight. And the other thing is like, okay, I'm gonna have all these awesome gimmicks for this boss fight, and then it's like, all right, here's what blah 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 blah, and then the players are like, wait, okay, so he turns purple, but the room temperature hasn't dropped yet, so his ice breath isn't active yet. But wait, his blood is it poison yet? It's like you're trying to make it some video game boss fight where there's too many phases involved and they get confused by it. So, don't
ever do that, GM. Seriously, don't.
Or actually, what actually that doesn't really happen. Well, I like the idea of phases in a boss fight. I mean,
but not just it changes color.
Actually, what I really see in tabletop RPGs, especially D&D ones, there's like status effects. And too many active spells going on, like in third ed, it's really bad. Where especially 3.5, when like epic level foes with like he has bull strength, owl's wisdom, resistance to energy, all 20, protection versus good superior, blah 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 blah, contingency spells, all this other bullshit, like 20 spells active on them. And you're like, God damn, how the fuck am I going to keep track of all this shit? So that's the other end of the boss fight. But that's a tactical concept. So that's the first step in making a good fight, is come up with a good tactical concept. So what are some other tactical concepts?
I think one is the fighting the environment.
Okay.
I think that's one. That's why the floor is lava, or you are on a sinking ship at the time.
Okay.
Or like a howling blizzard.
Okay. So I think, the tactical concept sort of informs you like what you need to emphasize. Obviously the terrain, that's the whole point of this.
Actually, may I bring up a video game?
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
There's one level where you're on a planet where the sun has actually kind of gone partially red giant, so it's bombarding the planet. The magnetosphere is gone.
Yeah.
So direct sunlight actually causes shields to fizzle out.
Yeah.
But so the game actually uses the level where you have to go for there's areas of shade, but if you're out in the open, your shields are dropping and but it works for the enemy too.
Right.
So you can actually sometimes lure them out into the sunlight, which makes them easier to kill, but then you are affected as well.
Right.
I think it's like fighting the environment.
So with that, like the thing I really keep in mind with the tactical concept is that one strong idea is a lot better than three kind of ideas. So if you have a really strong idea, like I like that idea of like the radiation coming and affecting your defensive ability. So you could do that in a superhero game easily, like you're in a mad scientist lair and there's some damaged reactor that's pulsating on an irregular basis, and every third round it pulses. And then all your superpowers don't work. So every third round you lose your powers, So like that would be interesting. So, but if you try to combine that with another concept, that's really tricky to do. So like if you do it like that and a boss fight, that's going to be really hard to do.
Not impossible, but
but it would certainly but that would make it a memorable fight. So it would either be a boss fight or just the environment. What I wouldn't do is make it to where the tactical concept is like unusual enemies, one common thing is like twins that fight in some dual or mirrored style, or like some exotic weapon master who's got some sort of unique gimmick. He's unbeatable except for one Achilles heel.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah. So like I would not combine those two together. So if there's some guy who's invincible except for one specific weakness, he can reflect everything you do except one type of attack. And then
I don't like those in video games.
They can be okay if it's short enough. Like if you only have to hit them once. If it's really like a puzzle and you're like, "Oh, I figure it out, zap, he's dead." Not if you like, "Oh, I figure out now I have to hit him 10 times." That would suck. But if you have to hit him once, that'd be fine as a single fight,
Yeah. Puzzles and combat's kind of interesting.
It's an interesting concept.
Like Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah,
where it's basically you're fighting them, but first you have to figure out how.
Right. I mean that's If it's definitely a good concept. The idea of a giant. It's basically you are literally fighting the terrain. I mean,
the creature is the terrain.
Yeah. So the first thing is tackle just one strong idea. Don't just let them focus on one thing at a time. So either focus, like if you're doing an environmental fight, just have them fight generic foes. They're just guys with guns or the typical kind of foe that they've been fighting for the campaign. And so that's what makes it, make it a tougher fight, so they have to use the terrain to their advantage if they want to survive or if they want to do well. But you get the idea. So, another type of fight, again, like I was just mentioning, is either the puzzle fight, which is the guy's invincible except for one weakness. Or the other one is what I like doing is something that's atypical, like a guy. Well, or actually, one of the fights would be the mini boss fight, where I like the idea of the boss's right hand man showing up, and he's like Jaws from James Bond or something like that.
Sure.
Someone with an unusual fighting style, and he isn't quite bad enough to fight everybody at once, but he's got a gaggle of goons with him, and he's there to win. He's not there for theatrics or whatever. The players, he just shows up and just starts beating on the players. So that's another one I like. So so that's the first thing, is like coming up with a good concept and sticking with that, not getting too cute with it, I guess. You know what I mean? So then the other thing is like, what kind of enemy, how much, who are they fighting really? And obviously that kind of depends on,
the game and the system.
The game and the system. But I think there are sort of absolute limits. Like a fight, I don't think should last, except unless it's been built up for the campaign, it shouldn't last more than 2 hours of real time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Most movies shouldn't do that either. So
right.
Because it's essentially, a lot of it is keeping your attention.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, everyone has a certain limited attention span.
Yeah.
And eventually you are going to, when you see other books being brought out, or and now cell phones being brought out, you kind of you're kind of losing them. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can violate that rule. Like, I mean, the thing you have to think about is, all right, if I have 5 players, each player takes 5 minutes, then, and I take 10 minutes to do a turn. So that's 35 minutes, or let's just say there's 4 players. So it's 30 minutes per turn. So how many turns of combat can I do? And so so any individual player is only going to get 10 minutes of action or 2 actions in an hour of real time. So you have to think about like what they can do. So you don't want like fights that last forever. That's one of the reasons I think why we keep going back to Call of Cthulhu is the fights, the thing is there's no hit point inflation. There's no 1,000 hit point. If there's a 1,000 hit point monster,
you're not winning.
Yeah, you're not winning. But the bad guys all have like, they can take 1 or 2 gunshots, they're or
depending on what gun you're using.
Yeah. Or if you roll really badly, but they only have 10, 18 hit points at most. So like a gun that does 2d6 or even 1d10 is going to take them out in a couple of shots. So you can really, have a meaningful fight where the players are
one that comes to mind, Master Nyarlathotep, the siege of that temple in Egypt.
Yeah.
It was a huge fight, but we were facing guys with guns.
Yeah.
And then one supernatural thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, but it was going quickly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So you have to think about like how...
Because most actual combat's pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the circumstances. Like,
But a skirmish is usually very fast.
Well, I mean, it all depends on context. Like a street fight, yes, very, very quick. A minute. If you're talking about a military conflict, like you have to think about the historical period, and like then you have things like in today in Afghanistan or in Iraq or someplace like that. Some security forces come against some insurgents. How long is that fight? Well, the initial gunfight where they're shooting at each other, maybe a few minutes, but then they spend hours
like maneuvering
around, trying to figure out where they are, and then followed by a few minutes of bloodshed, So, as opposed to like Napoleonic era, how long does the fight last? Fucking forever, and a day, because you're like, it takes 5 minutes to load your gun, shoot, and then load your gun, so hope you don't get killed.
No. And here's the other thing, I think, normal combat can be a bitch, but how about mass combat?
Mass combat, yeah, hasn't been really handled very well, except for a few RPGs.
Because it's in real life is usually a big chaotic mess.
Right. You really, there have been whole games attempting to answer that question. I mean, like Reign, the fantasy one roll engine game, and then
But I remember like in Braveheart where it shows that there's tactics and planning and preparation before, but once the two armies hit each other, it's just you kill whoever's in front of you.
Yeah.
And try not to get killed.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah, and it is. And if you're talking about role playing games again, like mass combat is a huge problem, and you really need to come up with some sort of specialized solution for that. There are several of them, and
because I think with
that's something that's beyond the scope of this.
I know, but I just think mass combat, you do have to eventually just bring it down and focus on your players and what they're doing.
Oh yeah, definitely. The whole point of a role playing game is to what are these characters doing and what's so interesting about them. I think the thing is though, like you have to think, all right, if a normal fight should be 2 hours most, and you're only in 2 hours, how many turns of combat is that going to be? 4, 5 hours at most. So you need characters that can achieve their victory conditions or lose. That's another thing about the tactical concept. The victory condition. How do they win or how do they lose the fight? And it's not always just kill all the bad guys or capture all the bad guys.
Even in a lot of games, they actually give if you get him down to this many hit points, he will surrender or they will attempt to flee.
Well, or like in the you're talking about the sinking ship fight. The victory condition isn't killing the bad guys.
It's getting off the ship.
It's getting to the lifeboat. It's like I'm on the lifeboat. I cut the ropes. See you
later.
Yeah. So that's how you do it.
Good luck treading water.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how you win the fight. That's how you lose the fight. And that's so you have to think about that. So how hard is it for the players to win or lose? And how long would it take them to win or lose? How long are they going to wait until they know? Like, you don't want the Monopoly thing where like, oh, our NPC's dead, but there's 50 more guys that we were supposed to guard is dead, and now there's 50 guys we have to fight. Well, we lost, but we gotta kill all these orcs.
So here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't want combat to here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So you definitely want to keep it, 2 hours of real time and sort of think about how much you can get done in that time. Unless there is an exception, though, and that's sort of the fight that you've been building up through the campaign, and usually a boss fight. Or like in the Heroes
or
of
a series, something. It was a series of fights,
right,
leading up to a boss fight. But
right, we actually Caleb's No Evil campaign had a good example of that, where we had a boss fight and we didn't even know about it because it was on the moon tier, and we were going after this crazy person who was walking on the moon. Like, oh, that's not good. And then we jumped down in the tunnel to find her, and oh, she's infected. She's good. There's a bunch of weird monsters. Okay, we kill those. Oh shit,
there's a big one.
Yeah. So it escalated into a boss fight. We didn't even know. So that was that had a really strong tactical concept. The sort of desperate, like, we have to stop it now. Sort of a race against time. So make sure none of these things get away, and then we can contain it. And it's kind of like a mutual ambush. We ambushed them, and then they ambushed us. So it was a very interesting.
Very nice.
Yeah. Very interesting dynamic. And the thing about Eclipse Phase is combat, again, characters can have a lot of hit points, but weapons can do a shitload of damage.
Yeah.
So fights can be over very quickly. And I think that's key to combat, is that combat, again, you can't, I think the problem, I think, in a lot of games is hit point inflation, or damage. Weapons can't do enough damage. You can't have, I hate that, most RPGs, a knife is 1d6 damage. A knife just fucking kills people most of the time.
Yeah, depending where it stabs you.
Yeah, well, even if it doesn't, you're gonna be like, even I stab you in the leg, even assuming I didn't hit your carotid artery or something like that. Femoral. Sorry.
God, Ross.
I know. I'm sorry.
Where's your? Don't you have a doctorate?
Yeah. Well, not in. not in that. So not in stabology.
It's too bad. It's great.
You're gonna lose, like, stabbing someone is gonna, like, I would say, at least reduce their health by half. Just because, like, you're really fucked up if someone plunges a knife into you. I'm talking, average, like, dagger, not just like a little.
Yeah. Never mind mega damage or some shit.
Nice. So keep combat short, but the fights that build up can last longer. Like, for me, also in absolute time, real lifetime, like. Here's a New Arcadia. You guys built up for that. You fucking begged for that big ass boss fight against the Paragon and her gang of evildoers.
Of course, I ended up being in jail.
Yeah, that's true. Which that was literally up to you. That was literally your character's decisions.
I think it was a good one.
Yeah. So, but that lasted 2 sessions, and that was like 4 or 5 hours worth of game time.
But that was like the end. That was the end fight of that tier.
And so the players were more, and everybody was on edge. Kale was like, "We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die."
Yeah. It's fine that if they're into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different. You can tell that too.
Yeah. So and players that as we've mentioned many times, players have different groups. I know there are a lot of groups out there that are really into tactical combat that really love okay, we're a group of soldiers and we're clearing this neighborhood house by house of mutants or zombies. We're playing XCOM, the tabletop role playing game. So
all right, I will turn this way. Do I see anything? I do not. I see something.
Yeah.
Do I have enough timed units to shoot it?
Yeah, something like that.
Son of a bitch. Well, I'm dead.
Yeah. So there are groups that love that kind of thing, squad leader kind of thing. So the more power to them, but be aware of most groups. I think like fights that don't last as long.
Yeah.
So the other thing is making sure everybody is involved. And so how do you do that? I mean,
Well, first of all, I would first know your group, know their strengths and weaknesses, and obviously, don't try to make sure everyone can use their unique ability, but make sure everyone has something to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's just being the meat shield or your hit squad. Yeah, I'd say first of all, make sure that whatever fight you plan, everyone has something to do.
Right.
Like if you I'm using this D&D as a template. If you have a rogue, make it where he can actually use the terrain to maybe score some sneak attacks. And
you don't want to have fights where it's like you're on a clear path.
I know you're in an open field.
You're in an open field. The grass is very short. They've been mowing it. The gnomes mow the grass, and there's daylight. With it. Yeah, there's no way you can hide.
Because there isn't much combat that goes on in open terrain.
Yeah.
Ask soldiers in World War I on No Man's Land how that works.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on the era too. Like ancient Greek guys would be like, or medieval knights would be like, yeah, fucking okay.
Oh shit!
As long as there's not archers, So
oh shit, they got archers.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And also I'd also say, actually, speaking of archers, if you have like the ranger type who's can shoot arrows, actually give him some kind of danger so he's not just shooting an arrow every turn.
Yeah. I think, so
because even if you're not in danger, but having nothing to do but just roll your die to attack, I think that's a way to lose.
I think that's definitely true. You need to put every player in danger. What I like doing is make sure there's enough bad guys that everyone gets at least one attacker shooting or attacking them, or use area effect weapons, or the bad guy has some sort of supernatural ability that can target multiple people, or there's just
so the players kind of have to watch their spacing.
So everybody gets cut up at least a little bit. I know, but the thing that what happens in a fight is often one player takes almost all the damage, and then everybody else is kind of like
usually the heavy armor melee guy.
Well, it depends. Like in the Iron Heroes campaign, the Forza War, it was Aaron in the last fight.
Oh,
Aaron took a lot of damage, and the big heavy guy who had all the armor was sort of like on the edge of the battlefield.
I got scratched.
Yeah, well, because he couldn't sneak up and like disable the machine war machines of the bad guys. So I'll talk a little about that later, I guess. So, make sure everybody has something to do. Make sure everybody is threatened in some way. I think the thing is, in D&D, you talk about everyone has something to do. I think the problem is in D&D, that's fine because everybody has some combat ability. By default, that's how D&D is set up. Even if you're a wizard, you know how to fight. You have something to do every round. But I think what do you do in like Call of Cthulhu or even Eclipse Phase or basically most role-playing games where you don't necessarily make a character that has any combat ability? So like how do you deal when like I'm the old professor with all the language skills and scholarship and like he's surrounded by private investigators and
so like
KGB
not
assassins.
like that happened to us recently.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Or?
Well, I'm not going to mention what this game I'm talking about is because I want, we'll talk about it later.
You're still playtesting it.
Yeah.
Or are you still
But
rerolling?
I'll just mention this.
All right.
Someone in the group, I'm
Yeah.
not going to mention any names, so you have to wait.
Yeah.
But I specifically said this is going to be survival horror and heavy and with a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
And so everyone's making, mercenaries, ex-FARC members, terrorists, mercs.
SAS sniper.
SAS snipers. One guy made an archaeology professor.
Yeah.
And not an Indiana Jones type, like an academic.
Yeah.
And I allowed it,
Yeah.
and he didn't do so well.
Yeah.
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 So I think, first of all, know what kind of campaign or scenario you're going.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but I mean, even in Eclipse phase, what do you do when there's someone who can't fight, and there's a fight going on? How do you keep them involved? Or,
well, in that case, Eclipse phase, there's a lot people can do to help the fight along.
yeah,
If you got a hacker type, you can actually use him to actually change the environment to more suit your your team.
I hacked the door to close it.
Or if you have if you have just a tech guy, you can have him actually maybe turn some of their weapons against them or something. There's always something for someone to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay. Yeah. I think, and also most of the characters, even though they weren't warriors, knew how to fight somehow. I mean, Preston, using that, was a radio host, but he could still fight when he needed to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he could.
He was betrayed by that woman. He thought he felt something with her.
Yeah.
It was just to get at him.
Wait, has that been posted yet on the podcast? I don't think so.
We're up to the where are we up to?
The salvage.
I think that's already happened.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's already happened.
Okay.
Because I think that was.
Oh, was that the start of Scum Swarm?
Yeah, it was around this.
Yeah. Anyways,
He was heartbroken.
Yeah.
But he soldiered on.
I think the thing is, also going back to the tactical concept, when you have a group that has like some people who are fighting and some who are not fighting, then you have to structure the fight so that the victory conditions again aren't kill the other bad guys. It's like, oh shit, guard the archaeology site while the professor performs the ritual to banish the dark demon. I'll hold off the cultists while you do that. That's sort of the obvious.
Or get our vehicle up and running again.
Right, or fix the vehicle, So then what you need to do is that sort of make combat against the vehicle. Like you have to make 5 skill rolls, and then you have to go over here to get the part, and then come back, dodging enemy fire.
Tear your shirt off at some point just to show how badass you are.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's essentially it comes down to fighting, but you don't necessarily it doesn't have to be fighting the enemy.
Yeah.
Everyone can be fighting, but not necessarily the same thing.
Well, they're contributing. They're helping in some way. It's not necessarily rolling damage. Again, it depends on the exact campaign, but there are a lot of ways that someone can help without actually.
Like I've been in a game where there's like one guy was playing like the driver of the team who'd never picked up a gun in his life.
Yeah.
But in this fight with a bunch of gunmen, he actually just hijacked a truck and started running them down.
Yeah.
So there's everyone can do something.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might actually see the players not realizing what he can do.
Yeah.
So I think at that point as a GM, I think you should throw out, don't just flat out tell them, but throw out some hints.
Yeah.
Or, maybe your players will notice that, hey, why don't you go do this? Oh yeah, I guess I could.
Yeah. That's players should help players. One of the things I liked about 4th Ed D&D was that a lot of the player classes had abilities they could grant only to other players, and that helped people pay attention. I know that there's like a warlord class, like, oh, here, I'll give you a bonus on this attack roll. I'll give you an extra attack, and that kind of thing. I wish more role-playing games had that kind of sort of synergy where like you could give bonuses to other players in certain circumstances, or you could help them. Because I think the idea of I go, you go is kind of encourages that sort of static thing, and that sort of static, like I'm only going to pay attention on my turn. So it's tricky. Of course, the biggest problem is, so these are all, we've all been kind of talking about fights that are kind of pre-planned. The typical like, I'm going to sit down between games. I'm going to write out. I'm going to have a map. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. That doesn't always work out, does it?
Actually, no, and it's actually sometimes not even the best thing to do.
Really?
No, actually, sometimes I've been in several games. I've run a few actually myself where a situation's coming up and either a player starts the fight, sometimes spectacularly starting the fight.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at not mentioning any names. I'm just staring directly at you.
I don't even know what game you're referring to.
There's so many, Ross. But sometimes where you weren't planning a fight at all, like you were just thinking, okay, this player, like they're gonna have a little conversation here, maybe a little posturing, and then someone whips out a shotgun and blows them away.
Or you think there's gonna be a fight, but you don't realize that the player totally fucks something up. Like I shoot my shotgun, kill the guy, and then bellow out a war cry, thinking like I thought you were going to stab him silently and not alert the 50 guys next to him, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's what I kind of like, those spontaneous fights. But the thing is, you have to.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you deal with spontaneous fights? How do you keep those interesting?
Well, first of all, sometimes I have to. Sometimes once or twice, particularly once again recently, I really had to admit to myself, I'm not really conscious enough right now to deal with a sudden, totally unplanned fight.
Right.
One that's happened, I think, actually maybe once another time years ago. But
sure,
it's moments where I have to go. Okay, I'm just going to have to either bring this to an end, or just do something because, or actually just fire the ret cannon.
Yeah.
But other times when I actually am all there, it's just all right. Bring the rain.
Okay.
And if something I learned from a dear friend of mine on the internet, fellow GM and my writer friend. I've mentioned her a few times. She's GM'd and she said her philosophy has always been, if you guys want to do that, all right, but the consequence, like on your own head, be it.
Right.
And you mentioned this, I think, earlier, or you were going to have players just assuming they're going to win any fight.
I mentioned that
I think
before we were planning this episode. Yeah,
I think that's where a lot of the problem comes in, because when they start a fight, they just expect to win.
Yeah,
and so I think part of a GM, you have to be have the balls. Like, okay, those 20 guys that were just going to be there to guard him, you blow them away, they're going to open fire, and you are not in cover.
Yeah.
So if you guys get killed, that's it. You guys get killed.
That's definitely true. But the real concern again is that if you don't have the time to plan the fight out, that then the fight is going to be boring. Like say you players are investigating this death cult, and the way the scenario is set up is, you assume when you're planning the scenario in between games that the players are going to go to the cave, and while they're at the cave, the cult is going to go to the mansion and steal the evidence. But they'll leave some clues behind so the players can track them to the swamp. All right, so you have the three places. But instead the players go like, you know what? Why don't we split up? 2 of us go to the swamp, or 2 of us go to the mansion. And the other players, no, fuck it. Let's set the swamp on fire and go to the mansion. They're like, okay. And so they set the swamp on fire, and thus the cult, pours out of that. The remnants of the cult, they see the players driving away, they chase them, and so now you have a chase from the swamp, on the road from the swamp, and you never expected that. So like you didn't have time to prepare that. So it's a intriguing scene, but how do you set that up? And of course the swamp monster is like, who the fuck burned my swamp, and has sent out his legion of bats.
I think if you're ready for the game, I think you can solve a lot of that by just a little bit of preparation.
Okay. What do you do?
Okay, like when I've done it and it's been successful.
Well, let's use the hypothetical.
Okay, so what I've done is, using that scenario.
Yeah.
First of all, let's set the swamp on fire. Easy way around there is saying, well, it's a swamp, it's extremely wet. Fire's not going to take.
Well, let's just say the players haven't.
Okay, let's say they've done.
One's of them a fire starter.
Okay, one thing, like have this beforehand.
Yeah.
Just some stats of some cult members.
Yeah.
And you could use them for how many you want. You can.
Yeah.
And so they're getting into a chase. Oftentimes, I find fighting while in a chase can be a fun but a real pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So the way if that was me, like, okay, every turn the driver's got to make a drive check.
Okay.
And I think you could actually do that, like opposing drive checks, to maybe whoever wins this round gets an advantage on their combat because they drove into a better position.
Yeah.
So say for that round, okay, one player's driving rolls, he succeeds better than the cult does. Okay, for this round, all of you, using Call of Cthulhu rules, all of you are going to get a plus 10 on all your combat rolls because your driver's keeping you lined up with them.
Yeah.
And essentially, you could just drive that until either you've killed the driver or killed all the cultists on the road, or if the cultists might overtake you, then they might run you off the road, and then now you're trapped in the swamp with them gunning for you.
Right.
Or you can or if you wanted to get back to the mansion, you could have the chase take back to the mansion.
All right. So you just have a series of combats, one right after
a series
the other.
of combats, and don't be afraid. I say don't be afraid to just make some shit up on the spot.
Okay.
As long as it has some basis in the system and reality.
Okay.
And something like that, just an opposed drive check every combat round.
Okay.
I think that's something you could do.
Something simple, like
I would
you don't want to get too bogged down again.
Yeah, especially if it's a impromptu combat you weren't planning on.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, one of the things I've learned from game mastering is a simple idea well executed is vastly better than a brilliant idea poorly executed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, there's so many times games are just kind of sub-average or they don't fill up the potential. I mean, obviously, the what you really want is a brilliant idea executed brilliantly. Yeah, but
those are the ones you talk about.
Those are the ones that take time to plan. You can't do that impromptu, I don't think. So yeah, I mean that's what every good idea is, like having stats of NPCs on hand, being ready to make up new rules on the fly. I know I do that a lot. Mm-hmm. Some people accuse me of improvising everything in a game, so not that I will comment one way or the other. So, but for me, I think it's also what I would do is make it a series, like it's sort of kind of a very come up in my mind a very quick flow chart. All right, you set the swamp on fire. All right, have them make spot checks. If they did make the spot check, they see cultists that were pouring out of the swamp or coming right back to the swamp that are nearby, and the players realize they have to either sneak away or kill those cultists silently, or the cultists will know that they're there. So if they fail, then the cultists see them and cue to car chase. Mm-hmm. So in the other scenario is, so the players see the cultists. Do they manage to sneak away or take the cultists out without being noticed? Okay, if so, then they can get away to the mansion. Which case it takes the cultists some time to track them down, so they can start the fight in the mansion. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, cue to car chase. So I think it kind of set it up. And then, of course, if they keep failing the skill checks, so it seems like the worst result, the ones if they don't make their skill checks, is the car chase. So in that case, I'd make it disadvantageous, where the cultists have Tommy guns and they're spraying. So even the best case scenario, their car is going to be shot up to shit. Mm-hmm. And probably because they're all in a confined location, they're probably all going to get flak and shrapnel and bullet wounds from this. So and of course, there's a chance. So during the car chase, if they fail a drive check, I wouldn't give them a bonus. If they fail the drive check, they crash. They all take damage, and then they have to fight from the car wreck if they want to survive the cultists. Mm-hmm. So
and a problem I've run into that often when I'm running that sometimes discourages me is like using that same the case of the mansion. They decide just not to go there and set the swamp on fire, but you really need them to get to the mansion. There's ways to do that. As simple, once again, another spot hidden check. Maybe like show them some cultists coming back with stuff that were clearly from the mansion,
right?
So they've been there,
right?
It's if you can figure, it's just basically kind of use some quick logic.
Yeah. Well, for me though, I try and approach scenarios so that I never have to ask myself, or I never put myself where they need to be in the mansion. Mm-hmm. Where I say, I know what happens if they go to the mansion, and I know what happens if they don't go to the mansion. So that, again, I try and do a flowchart kind of thing where I know what the basic reaction of any given, action, the result of any given action is. So if they don't go to the mansion, all right, Cthulhu shows up, or like the Dark One shows up, or the cult is strengthened or whatever. So that's how I
guess give them some clues, but if they choose their fate, they choose their fate.
Right. So again, I kind of do it as a very quick. If they do this, they get this. If they do this and this, they get this. So it's A, B, or C, and try to keep it fast and try and keep it. So like the cult, even the car chase fights would be like one car of cultists, with 4 guys in it. So it wouldn't be even if they wreck their car and they kill those cultists, but they still manage to kill the cultists, then they can either, if their car is intact, they could just take it, or then they could just fucking walk to the mansion or to the village, or to the cave, try and get someplace safe, or try and hide from the cultists. So either way, an excited narrative is achieved. So. Again, I think that's the main thing with combat. Combat is not an end of itself. Combat is a means to the end. And the end, of course, is a good, fun, exciting game. And so create drama, create conflict. And so in order to do that, you have to make combat that is sort of exciting. You know? And what is exciting? Something that's got high stakes, something that's meaningful, something that has danger, something that
it's something
novel,
something that takes them by surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have to keep it varied. In the Iron Heroes campaign I've been running, every fight's had a very different feeling. One fight the players chose to go on, like, oh, that bad guy's running away. Fuck it, we're going to abandon half the party and chase after him. Okay, we have to make all the skill challenges. All right, we make them. All right, fine. You get him. He starts poisoning you. What? He's a poisoner. He has poison daggers. He has poison throwing bombs. And he's like, fuck, this is hard, Ross. This is bullshit. You chased after him. You literally picked a fight with him. He was running away. He was already going.
And again, don't be afraid. Players, I'll say, as GMs, don't be afraid to, don't be afraid to show no mercy, and players don't just expect to win every fight. Yeah,
don't expect to win every fight. You're going to have to run away, or you're going to have to, remember your victory conditions. So that's really the key to a good fight. So
there's a lot of movies and situations where the heroes do not win a fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes they cock it up pretty bad.
Like in the superhero genre, it's like part and parcel that the good guy gets his ass kicked. Always like in any beginning story arc, like, oh God, the Vulture showed up. Well, I'm Spider-Man. I'm going to kick. Oh my God, the Vulture's kicking my ass. What is going on? And so
he goes back and then to think, what did I do wrong?
Wait, the Vulture's got new powers. How did that happen? I have to find out.
What would Uncle Ben do?
Yeah, exactly. And then cue dilemma. So that's the idea is, you getting your ass kicked or having to run away is part and parcel of the genre of any adventure kind of, so don't get all bummed out about it. Don't feel like you have to, kill everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. GMs that let you kill everybody suck anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Jesus. What's wrong with you guys?
Actually, there's some players that have never lost a character.
I will fix that.
Particularly, that's like D&D characters are particularly bad at that.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's one of the things I like about like Knights at the Dinner Table. They keep talking about how like I do read that comic and they do these elaborate D&D type campaigns and all their characters keep dying over and over. They make Knuckles the 18th, So like just kind of that like adversarial old school.
Talk about rules lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, Tom does not have I think it kind of sums up unless there's anything.
Yeah, I think we got it down.
So, if you have any comments about it, post them on the website, post them on our forums.
We'll answer questions. We love to answer questions.
Actually, Tom does not have a letter, but Tom we do have 2 listener letters.
So I think sometimes it's good for me to shut up and read your stuff.
I would like to bring up one little thing though. Speaking of listener letters, I get a fair amount of email. We get a fair amount of email and messages about RPPR, and we appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys.
Strokes our egos.
Yes.
It's what we feed upon.
Yes. And one thing I really like, or one thing that keeps getting asked a lot, on a fairly regular basis, I really liked Adventure X. X is usually Slender Man or Candle Co. or Tom's Divine Fire. And I want to run it for my group. Can you send me your notes for it? And I'm like, I appreciate that.
But something you need to realize. Yeah. Something you need to realize. Ross and me particularly, our game notes are handwritten on notebooks.
Yeah. I tend to handwrite stuff, especially when I come up with ideas to outline.
And so do I.
Type it up. And so I would have to type all that up, and that's a lot of work. And to make it English, that other people could read and not just like...
Your chicken scratches?
Yeah, well, no, it's just like I was like... three elements, this, and this.
3LM.
Yeah.
Well,
no. They're words, but it's just like it's just a few words.
I tend to abbreviate a lot.
I don't abbreviate it. It's just like it's just three elements, and then I list three elements. I don't explain what they are, what's important about them, or anything about it. It's just encounters, bar, swamp, cave, mansion. That's it. And then I write a few words about each one. I don't describe what the mansion encounter is in my head. I just have like, oh yeah, I need to do the mansion encounter. So what I'm saying is I'd actually have to write it up. I mean, it's the notes aren't enough. I'd have to write several thousand words. So that's a lot of work. And my plan actually is to eventually publish all this material through Kickstarter or through the Unspeakable Oath or something like that. So eventually, when I get these scenarios written up, I actually did a poll on the RPPR forums asking, what do you guys want to see first? Here's a new Arcadia or Slenderman, Carcosa or whatever. And here's a new Arcadia one. That's why I'm doing Base Raiders first. So next year, I'll probably do something along the lines, something based on the Carcosa material. I've been talking about it last episode.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Architectural horror and all that. But that's next year, and that's going to be an actual professional thing, And so I appreciate it all, but I'm not in any position to give those notes away. So if you want to talk,
if you want to ask some advice for how to run that,
that being said, there are people who've already done it just based on the podcast themselves, and they're usually on the RPPR forums or on our Facebook group. So if you have questions about like, I want to run Candle Cove, or I want to run Divine Fire. Here's what I think I'm going to do. What do you guys think? The RPPR community is really good about answering those kind of questions, and I pay attention to those. I usually answer those kind of questions, and I just consider I prefer public discussion to one-on-one emails because that way there's an archive, and that way other people can read it.
And usually other people will think of shit you didn't.
Exactly, and other people can just like refer back to it. So I think it benefits everybody. If you want to get help with your scenarios that are from RPPR, you should talk to the other RPPR fans. I'll add in my 2 cents, but they're not ready yet for publication. I don't know. Well, Tom, what about Divine Fire? Since
it's the same thing with me. Like all of my notes were handwritten in a notebook. I'm trying to get them typed up now.
Yeah,
I mean, but they're not done. They're not ready for prime time yet.
Right.
So, there's
no ETA.
No ETA.
You're on Valve time.
Yeah, it'll be ready.
You're on Valve time.
It'll be ready soon, in quotation marks.
I gotcha.
But I am working on them.
Okay.
I have a lot of other stuff I'm doing right now.
Okay.
So, but no, it's definitely planned in the future. I'm also writing some other stuff for Ross too.
Yeah. And we'll when that gets closer to release time, we'll announce it, and then we'll be do podcasts about that.
I'm probably
our books.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna ask him to do some stuff for Base Raiders if I can.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Whatever you want to do. Like
I've got several ideas of stuff I just want to do.
Tom, the more you want to write, the more I will put in the book. And we can.
We will make content.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be right back with some listener letters and then some shout outs and an anecdote.
And it'll be great.
And we're back with some listener letters. So we like those. These we got a little while a couple weeks ago.
They still have that listener smell to them. Yeah. It's like new car.
Sure, Tom. How are those new meds working out?
Do I creep you out, Ross?
No.
Of course I don't.
No. Why don't you go first then?
Why don't I? Okay, this one is from Christian, and he's writes, Dear RPPR, I'm a huge fan and had a question I needed help with, and had an anecdote I figure you might enjoy. I'll start with my question. I'm a huge fan of Old World of Darkness. After listening to your actual plays and your podcast to become a better GM, I finally decided on what game I wanted to run for my friends. I settled on Hunter the Reckoning. I had originally tried to do Call of Cthulhu, but in the end I found that it wasn't good for the group size and wasn't the game type for what I wanted to do. I enjoy horror, so I figured that Hunter would give me the ability to create a better story for my players while still having squishy players that the fear of death was always prevalent. The problem I faced, though, was whereas I love the setting for Old World of Darkness, I can't seem to ever get the feeling for combat down, and understanding it eludes me. Is there any way you can give me an easier to understand breakdown of combat? Because for the life of me, soaking damage, determining damage, and pretty much all of the combat as a whole just continues to elude me. Thanks for the help in advance. I haven't listened to every episode yet, so I wasn't sure if there was an episode where you broke down combat and other elements of different game types throughout role-playing. Thank you in advance for any help you can have. And before I go, a quick anecdote from some of the first games I ever played. When I moved into my apartment and started college, the first role-playing games I ever played were Palladium with my roommate. I know how much Tom loves this system, so I had to write in with it. We played Heroes Unlimited, and I had rolled an APS metal character with supernatural physical strength who the group had affectionately called Metal Dick. We were doing a quest line involving an old martial arts master who had dim mock, and we were tracking him down when we encountered a dragon. My roommate wasn't the type of vengeful GM, so we were all certain that there was some trick to defeat the all-powerful dragon. I had announced that I was going to rip up a tree using my super strength and throw it at the dragon, but then our friend Sean came up with what he thought was the greatest attack ever conceived. Now, to put it nicely, Sean was, for lack of a better word, our group's Aaron. His heart was in the right place, but needless to say, his decisions caused him to roll new characters up constantly. This time he had rolled a cyborg who had rolled well on funds and background, so he had made himself into this half-a-ton Terminator covered in weapons and tech. He looked at me with all the tension of a B-grade action movie and said, "No, Chris, throw me." He sat back with a smile on his face and proud of the wonderful plan he had come up with. Surely with his weight he would deal enough damage being thrown by a character as strong as I, so I picked him up and heaved him at the dragon with all my might. Some dice were rolled and my GM exploded with laughter. That dragon parried the shit out of Sean without any effort whatsoever. That was the end of Sean's new character, parried into space by a dragon. To this day, we still joke that his character had become an incredibly useful satellite for our team to use and coordinate our attacks. In the end, we found out all we had to do was make it through one round with the beast, and the right course of action was to speak to it, not attack it outright. I too hate this system, but damn, that was a hilarious session. Thanks for any advice you have. Hope you enjoyed the story, and thanks for all the wonderful tips and actual plays you guys post. Tom and Ross, from all my friends who game with me, you guys are great, and keep up the awesome work.
Aww.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that was...
First of all, I'd like to admit, yes, you are correct. Palladium sucks as a system.
Yeah.
I mean, it's... Once again, I'll say awesome settings, but an unworkable system.
Fun settings.
Fun. Okay, fun. I'll go that far, but... Yeah, actually, I think I've already done some stuff, talked about Heroes Unlimited.
We have tread that area.
Like my medical doctor with an IQ of 3.
Yeah. But for your question, the World of Darkness is actually, I mean, if you look at the comments on the actual plays, people criticize us for not doing it well. So we're really the wrong people to ask.
Then again, I think, we run it just enough to make it fun and workable.
Well, yeah, it's fun and workable, but we kind of miss some of the rules. I think the best way to learn any system, though, combat system, is just do example combats by yourself.
Yeah.
Just to go over it yourself and kind of like... Werewolf A versus Vampire B, go. They trade blows with each other and just roll the dice until you get a sense of you do this, this, and this. So that's one way of doing it if you're really determined to learn it,
Yeah.
Other than that, if you have specific questions, post them on a public forum like the White Wolf forums, RPPR forums, RPG.net. Some role-playing game community will be able to answer your questions better.
There's a lot of gamers out there.
Yeah, and again,
that World of Darkness really isn't our system.
Yeah, it's not our wheelhouse, as they are wont to say in these days.
It's not our bailiwick.
Yeah, there we go.
If I might go old-fashioned.
Yeah, there we go. I prefer wheelhouse. Wheelhouse sounds so awesome.
It's almost like a roundhouse kick.
Yeah, exactly. So, but again, just practice the system, read the book, and ask questions online. That's the only that's the only way to learn any system, really. I think. I mean, there's no secret to it. And if you you can't just ask, how do I learn it? Well, you kind of have to break it down. How do I do this? How does this work? You have to read the specifics. General questions like that are really hard to answer. In general.
And we ask, especially about combat.
Yeah. How do I game better? How do I run games better?
Yeah.
Well.
But as this actual
not bad.
But as this episode was about, combat's kind of complex.
Yeah, and we all only went over sort of conceptual things that aren't really connected
Rule
to one
specific,
space. Yeah,
yeah.
rule specific. Because every game system has its own sort of quirks that creates a different dynamic in combat. I mean, New World of Darkness is often accused of gun nibble, where like the guy with the pistol, I blink away, do 1 point of damage to every round, pew 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 pew, which is different than Call of Cthulhu. Like, well, impaled with my 45, that's 20 damage.
Yep, and now that was 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Oh, you are dead.
Yeah. Well, just one bullet could do 22 damage easily, or actually 24 damage, double damage, and 45 does up to 12 damage. So, yeah,
Death.
So that's something to keep in mind. So, I'm sorry we can't help you more. Thanks for listening.
And that was a great story, too.
That was an awesome story. Now I have one. There's one other letter we got. This is from Oren. Hello, RPPR. Oren here from the All Things Trek podcast. I really enjoyed your recent horror episode, and I've employed many of the techniques myself over the years. Another trick that I found very handy when I try to sprinkle a bit of horror into my Hunter and Call of Cthulhu games. Well, that's good. You want
It's very good, yes.
A bit of horror in those.
You
games.
want some.
A bit of horror in Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, just a touch.
Is to play with the idea that the monsters fit into society more than the hunters or investigators do. Vampires can manipulate politics with plots that span generations. An old one's avatar in this mortal coil can hide quietly inside the mind of the PTA organizer. On the other hand, the hunters and investigators tend to be scarred and grizzled to the point of psychosis, often barely holding together just long enough to disappear from the public eye and head out into the night with pants-shitting arsenals of strange weapons. If the cops get called to a showdown between hunters and monsters, I think we all know who's going to get cuffed.
Yeah.
No one, because
The cops are dead.
The cops are going to be murdered by both sides. Let's be honest. Because the players would be like, we're the good guys. If somebody's trying to stop us, they're bad, he has a gun that I want.
Unless it's like a grizzled maverick cop or something.
Well, then that's a player character.
Yeah.
And then the PC Halo will alert you that person should be.
Yeah,
okay.
but say some human like just shoving a vampire's head into a filing cabinet, like, better file this guy under G for garbage.
Yeah, like the vampire PTA organizer. Here, how about some extra credit? Bam, bam. And the guy's like, oh my God, put that poor woman down. Well, I draw my katana.
Well, you brought a sword to a gunfight.
Well, yeah, but I'm a vampire mage investigator. Yeah, because we know how those games go.
Oh yeah.
That's a good criticism because like one term that I love from RPG.net is for the typical player character is the murder hobo. And he really is. They're homeless. They have no ties to society, and they just murder things like all the time. Like not even being serious. Like, oh, there's a thug trying to mug me. I blow his head up.
And then look at you funny when you question them.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Spare him?
He was dissing me. He was going to kill me. I had to kill him first.
He's coming right for me.
Exactly. So anyway, the rest of the letter. And here's an anecdote for you. This took place during an Iron Kingdoms D20 game I ran a few years back. One of the characters was a paladin of Mora with an 8 in his intelligence score. Sir Cody, obviously not our Cody, took a very optimistic view of it. Definitely not Cody.
No.
Even as he waded neck deep in undead mechana thralls, he saw in everything in black and white terms. There was good and there was bad. Sir Cody was there to do good. This was actually very good for the game as it had become somewhat bogged down by players always arguing the complex moral implications of whatever action they chose to do next. Sir Cody helped the other characters believe that they were doing the right thing. He also had a two-handed, oversized maul that did an ungodly amount of damage, but that's besides the point.
Exactly.
One session, through a series of shenanigans, Alan, the party wizard, wound up giving Sir Cody a helmet with +6 intelligence enchantment on it. With an intelligence of 14, the Cody's player decided to play him as a much more observant and well-spoken. This was a huge boon to the party at first, as said players, a born tactician, was able to help them turn the tide of an important battle that was not going their way. However, as the session went on, Sir Cody's player decided that his increased intelligence had caused the paladin to lose faith in Morrow for what just God would allow such horrors that he had witnessed. As such, he decided that Sir Cody had lost access to his paladin abilities, mind evil, and the like. Sir Cody had a choice to make. He could wear the hat and be able to interact with his fellow man on an intelligent level, or he could take it off and regain his faith in Morrow. along with his divine abilities. It was a very powerful moment at the time, both for Cody's player and for the group as a whole. These were the moments we all played for. In the end, Sir Cody decided to throw the hat away and return to a simplistic view of the world. There was good and there was bad. There was a moment of play that I doubt any of our group will forget, and I'd like to have pointed out that it all happened without planning or interference from me. So,
very nice.
I mean, that's great. That's Algernon's flowers, or flowers for Algernon. For Algernon, without any idea. Yeah, just that. You see, this is what the things I like about role. The very core of what I love about role playing game is that it's a story created by all the GMs and the players, and no one knows what the story is before it's actually played out. No one's like, yeah, we're gonna do Algernon's for flowers with a fucking paladin. Woo! Like they didn't sit down to do that, but that's what happened, and that's a drama that happened, and it worked within the game system. It had the mechanism, the random results, and of combat and dice roll and all this other stuff, and so it wasn't just predetermined, and so it was great. It was. I love that story. That's awesome. So thank you, Gord.
Thank you for that.
So when we come back, we'll have shout outs and anecdotes.
It'll be lovely.
And we're back. So
we really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of like putting a little music interludes in there.
Just a little bit, just like smooth things over. Just like
I guess
smooth transition.
I just like. There's all this PodSafe music that's just free for use for podcasts, and I figure I might as well use it. So
if the resource is there, use it.
Yeah, I know like a lot of podcasts do like one song that they have for everything, and that's it. But
we varied up. It's layers upon layers.
There you go, Tom. All right, so shout-outs. First off, I'd like to, since we're going with combat, I'm going to talk about the best combat video game I've played in a long time, and that will be Hotline Miami. This is a $10 game on Steam and GOG, and it's coming out for Mac soon.
Isn't this the game where you're a guy in pastel suits and animal masks?
Well, you're really like in a letter jacket, like a high school varsity letter jacket, but yeah, you have a mask. You start with a chicken mask, so you're a guy in a chicken mask killing people, or you can get every there's like 20 masks. Each mask has a different ability, and you
eat your heart out, David Lynch.
Yeah. Oh my God, it is very Lynchian because basically you just get a message on your voicemail saying that's just like boils down. Go to this address, and you go to this address. There's a bunch of people there, and what do? You just kill them all. You don't know why. You don't know who they are.
You don't even know if you actually got a message.
They are all armed. They're all members of the Russian mafia, apparently.
But you don't even know if you actually got a message.
Well,
if it's just in your mind.
Yeah, that's true. It's a pretty there's a lot of interesting plot twists on it, and it's a very short game. It took me about 8 hours to beat, but I keep going back to it because the gameplay is so good. And I'm trying to beat my high scores, trying to get all the achievements. Each mask you get, you unlock has different abilities. Like one of them, you can kill people barehanded. Otherwise, you just not like the default thing is you punch somebody, they fall down, then you can execute them on the ground or pick up a weapon and wait for them to stand up and then kill them. And then guns create noise and attract bad guys showing up. And there are it's very fast paced. Recklessness is rewarded. You can just steamroll your way through a level. But one thing is your character dies in one hit, like literally,
like in reality.
Yeah, exactly. One hit, you're dead. And it's like got this weird top down 8-bit, 16-bit kind of graphics.
I looked at it. It looks like a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah, it does, but it's so fucked up and weird.
In fact, it reminds me of one game in particular.
Yeah.
The True Lies game for the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
Just look at some pictures, screenshots of that, and tell me if it's not similar.
All right, I'll take a look. The thing is, though, it's got great music, too. Mm-hmm. It's got this kind of retro future kind of like electronic music that sounds like it should have been from the 80s, but it's very pulse-pounding, very good. And it's just amazing. It's a great, fun game to play.
Super.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, mine are actually I have a shout out. It's two movies, but I got them on one DVD.
Yeah,
it's one. The first one is an '80s horror movie. Just me and those.
Yeah,
called The Curse, which is like alien rock falls on this farm, and alien goo leaks out, and then it makes everything bad.
Yeah,
and then bad gross things happen to everyone around. The director, says he got some of it from the color from outer space.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like that.
Kind of like that.
And then, like on the same DVD, just on the other side from the set was Curse 2, which has nothing at all to do with the first movie. It's actually a 1990 movie. But it's basically snakes out in a nuclear test site are changed where their bite doesn't kill you, but makes them, whatever it bites, into a snake monster.
Oh, wow. That has nothing to do with the first one.
At all. This is now, of course, it's radiation. When radiation did whatever science wanted it to do.
But it kind of still does. Not more. Now it's more the nanos and the biotech and the what's it. But
this is when radiation did whatever people wanted.
Yeah. Fucking Deus Ex radiation.
Yeah, and it's actually got a few people that actually meant something in acting a while ago, before that.
Okay.
Sometimes you see someone like, why is he, like, didn't he really? It's like seeing Abe Vigoda in Good Burger. Like, what are you doing in this? You were in The Godfather.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the thing is, like, they're really good practical effects movies, and I really dig those.
Yeah.
Good monster stuff.
Cool.
What do you need?
Cool. Back to the action theme. Another movie, actually, one we've both seen, and also from the 80s, or at least Miami Connection.
Oh,
which has been re-released by Drafthouse Cinema, and Taekwondo Anti-Insanity is how they describe it, and it is really fucking insane. It's available now as an HD download, and it is just balls to the wall
madness.
Crazy. Yeah, it's about cocaine ninjas, a band called Dragon Sound, that they're all Taekwondo black belts, and just, I can't even describe more of it. It's just so fucking weird, and
there's no mandroids, though.
There's no mandroids, but Tom, help me out here. I mean, just what can you say about Miami?
You can't.
You can you go to drafthousefilms.com. You can actually download the 2 songs for them. One of which is I show you Against the Ninja, which is a great sound for a song. I mean, so that's touring around the country.
Yeah, ninja's actually a hard word to rhyme.
But you can watch either as a download or in theaters. Select cities around the country. They're doing a tour. So that's going to be pretty awesome. So I would love to see it in a theater with other people. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's a great film. So it's just crazy. And one other film that people really compare this film, Hotline Miami, to this film. This is called Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. Mm-hmm. So also has Albert Brooks in it and Bryan Cranston.
I didn't know Albert Brooks could play a villain.
And Albert Brooks?
I didn't know he could.
Yeah.
Until I saw this movie.
Did you see Drive?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Yeah, no, and Ron Perlman's in it.
You gotta love Ron.
Yeah. So it's basically about a very violent man who's also very good at driving, and he has some disagreements with some people, and
they resolve them peacefully with violence.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. So that's great. It's a great film. It's on Netflix, and it's got a great soundtrack, and it is worth seeing. So
it's
extremely violent.
It's like a more mature Drive Angry that actually has a plot and characters and acting.
So it's not like Drive Angry at all.
When you put it that way. Yeah.
So one of the ebook I read recently is called Kicking It. It's from Monty Cook. Recently did the Numerenia Kickstarter, which is a tabletop role-playing game Kickstarter, which raised over $500,000. So he knows a little bit about Kickstarter. Uh-huh. His original goal was $20,000, and he raised over $500,000. And so people have asked me advice for Kickstarter, and basically a lot of the advice I have, read that book first. That's my advice. It's just get that and read that, because that has a lot of good advice on how to set up your Kickstarter, how to get it ready to go, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing, is it worth, like, for example, banner ads, I don't really see much of a point in investing in them. I mean, you can try, but I've had mixed results with banner ads. So it's how do you get people to pay into your Kickstarter? So if you want to do that, I would recommend getting it. It's only like $4, $5, something like that. So worth getting. Finally, a couple more. I've just got a ton this week. It's a comic book, Godzilla: The Half Century War from DW. Which is very much an action thing. I know you would love it too, Tommy, because it's about.
I've got the first issue. Yeah,
the first issue. Yeah, there's 3 that are released so far. There's going to be 5, so you might just wait for the trade paperback to come out. And the first 3 issues so far it's about the guys in the monster defense. You know how in the Godzilla movies, there's always the people that are shooting the ray guns and the tanks.
Who are there to get destroyed.
Yeah, well, they're also no. The real role is to show how badass Godzilla is. Like, see, we have all these tanks and missiles and helicopters and jet fighters and blah,
and he just really
fuck it.
Fuck you.
I don't even give a fuck. Playtime's over, motherfuckers. So
it's go time.
Yeah, it's go time. So, but it's about this guy who's just, trying to fight Godzilla, and it's going all the way from like the 60s to the Vietnam
It was
War.
1957, actually.
Yeah,
which is
there we
like
go.
the first appearance of Godzilla.
Yeah, and the plot, it revolves around people misusing the technology that they developed for it, and sort of the backstory behind. I don't know. I can't wait to read the last 2 issues. So that's really good. One quick shout out to Invasive Procedures. The full actual play is on the actual play website. We ran it in 3 sessions. It is a crazy ass horror scenario. Also, really well written.
Great
What
villain.
do you think? Yeah.
I mean, well, first, I'm a huge fan of the villains involved. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always loved them, and the scenario's great. The situation's great. I mean, son of a bitch. And I love the mechanic of who your characters are. Like the penalties,
The pre-gens.
the penalties for moving around.
Yeah.
That's great because
you're
it's.
walking
I'm thinking like, holy shit, that would be true.
Yeah.
You're trying to heal,
Yeah. It would
and you keep doing things like getting out of bed.
Yeah, and picking fights with things that should not be. So, or running around. So, I love that. And finally, I just want to mention a new game we tried out. I actually bought this a couple of years ago at Gen Con, but I put it in a box, forgot about it. Then just refound it, like while I was moving some things around. Like, oh yeah, I should try this. It's called Zombie Cinema, and it's a role-playing game, but it comes with just like this little pamphlet for rules and one tiny board and a couple of game pawn pieces and a couple dice, and it's all put in a VHS box. And so it's a storytelling game where you're all survivors in a zombie attack. And the idea is, do you escape or do you get killed? And it has some interesting mechanics for it. Tom, what do you think about it? So
I think it took a while to get used to.
Yeah.
Because it's it's narrative based. So each character is supposed to, contribute to the narrative. But, being gamers, it's basically me.
Yeah.
Me.
Well, I think the thing is, you have to do sort of a brain shift for this game. And normally, it's like we're a team, but we're fighting the zombies, right? But
no, this time there's zombies, and I have to get out at any cost.
Well, no, the thing is, it's driven by player versus player conflict of some sort. So there has to be a conflict for your piece to advance closer towards escape. So you have to pick some sort of conflict with other players. It doesn't have to be a literal fight. It could be an argument. It could be a chase scene, or it could be whatever. And so that's when you roll dice, and that's when you kind of determine whether your character escapes or, who wins the conflict and who loses the conflict. Whoever wins goes ahead, gets closer to escape the other one. Who loses goes back. Other players can help or throw in their support one way or the other. And it's interesting. So I don't know. I really liked it. It's a good, we played 2 games of it. Each one took about an hour.
Yeah.
We recorded, of course. I don't know when I'll post that. But it's worth it if you can find a copy. It's worth checking out. It's a good pickup game. There's no prep required, and good stuff.
Good stuff.
So for anecdote, Tom, I'll talk a little bit about Iron Heroes. Do you want to talk about one of your games you've run or played recently, or what are you thinking, Tom?
I'll talk a little bit about the one I just ran.
All right, why don't you talk about that, Tom?
All right, I will. So, by the way, I ran the completely rough draft, version of a Call of Cthulhu scenario I'm working on.
Yeah.
Because I have a wonderful group of players to help me play test it. And this is the one where I mentioned where Aaron played the archaeology professor amongst a team of mercenaries and cutthroats and killers.
Yeah, we were all basically horrible people, and I wished we all died.
Takes place South America in 1996.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's the hunt for Pablo Escobar's treasure.
Yeah.
Is essentially what it is, and it's one of those games where Ross did something that essentially made me realize I was first not in the mental capacity to run it, but also it's one of those situations. It was the scenario like we just talked about, where he did something through combat that basically I could not plan for or deal with. So I had to go. We're straight to the boss fight.
Yeah.
And it's
You want to leave that? You don't want to spoil that. You want to leave that?
no. I want people to want to hear the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
And especially when I run the actual, further polished version later this week.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But to suffice it to say, it was involving some moments. I'm not picking on Aaron here, but it's just I think it needs to be said. He just voluntarily wanted to do stuff that he wanted to go crazier than he went.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's why kind of I disagree with, like, sometimes when players want to interpret how a sand loss went.
Yeah.
I really don't think sometimes that's not a good idea, because he lost, I believe, 1 sanity and was acting like he had lost all of it.
Yeah. Well, not all of it, but like 5 or.
And also
his
his character, great example of just because you're well educated doesn't mean you're smart.
Yeah.
Like, he just ran off into the jungle.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Aaron always ties in these Call of Cthulhu scenarios, but this you can't blame this on anything other than Aaron. Aaron literally chose his path. Like, he did not. Everyone's like telling, no, don't do that. And
you instituted a new kind of game that I just love, which I believe you called the Race to Zero Sanity.
Yeah, I posted this on the Facebook group, but the idea is we had a break in the game, and I started talking like an Aaron's like, well, Chuck, we've got a very good game of Race to Zero Insanity. Aaron's up ahead, but yeah, I think, do you think the other players can do it? The other players
it was like, well, of course, Jim, I think the big bad's about to show up, so I think we should be seeing some great action here. And there he comes, and oh, look at that!
Total upset, yeah. So, that was a fun game. And
I mean, the thing is, it was an abysmal failure to me as a story.
Yeah.
But as a fun game, apparently,
I don't think it was an abysmal failure as a story. I mean, just because it
wasn't ready.
No, it was ready. Like, that's the thing, Tom. I mean, that's what playtesting is all about, and you really have to just throw it out there and see how it meets. Because if you keep trying to write stuff, and the only way you make games better, you write games, is you actually have to run them. That's just, it was ready. Now, you didn't get the result you wanted, but that's the brilliance of gaming. Like we just talked about with the Flowers for Algernon story. The GM didn't. Sometimes it pans out and you get Flowers for Algernon. Sometimes you get Aaron running into the jungle and that thing that I did that you didn't expect. So that's just.
Well, everyone said it was a great time.
Yeah, no, it was great. I love those kind of games where you can cut loose and you don't have to play like a normal person.
Well,
I've
taken a lot of lessons from it, so I think this next run's going to be even better.
And that's the thing. You don't have to be so anxious about running new scenarios if untested material. That's the whole point of this.
Well, that's why I did it, because I knew I had this group.
You just got to throw it out there and see how it happens.
But it's insane, and we break down laughing so many times. Yeah. And I just think it's not ready, but as Ross says, no, it's ready.
You gotta stop doing that. You always do that with your scenarios. It's like, it's not ready. It's and then you just go out there, like Divine Fire. You're very kind of worried about it at the beginning, but then and the first time
I'm confident now. Yeah, because the first Divine Fire you were German.
I'm just talking about.
Well, remember you were German soldiers.
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, using the help of the group, like, no, it would be better if you were prisoners.
Exactly. That's the whole process. So you don't. I think it's better to just come up with an idea, write it, and then throw it out there quickly so you can fine tune it, rather than spend too. Like, you could definitely fall in the trap of trying to spend too long writing the first draft of the scenario before it ever playtests it, and then just waste a lot of time, or energy by doing that. You just get an idea and see how it meets the players. I mean, that was totally perfect. That was perfect for a first draft scenario. So now you've got the valuable feedback, and now you can really fine tune it and make it, a perfect scenario or a con scenario.
I don't think we've actually done that. Then a run of a rough draft, and then the next week doing the revised.
Not next week, but I mean, Divine Fire you ran 3 times.
And I'm talking about this one.
Yeah,
I don't think we've actually done that close together.
No, I don't remember what the time.
So
between the first
I think it might be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting this Friday.
Sure. No, it'll be great. I look forward to it.
Okay.
So I do want to give a little update on the Iron Heroes campaign, Aaron. So they had a boss fight this time, and the boss fight was the players had to ambush this. Had to deal. They're following this army. That's the main plot of the campaign, and they know the army is going to get ambushed by the enemy, obviously at a choke point The enemy was going to wait for until they get across the river and then just pounce on them and drive them into the river. And
essentially what happened at the Battle of Stirling Bridge between the Scots and the English.
Exactly. And so they need to, and the key to that is they're going to have these big iron steampunk war machines. If you've read the comic Wolfskin and the 100th Dream, it's those things. So they have these big three scary, and so the players have to go sabotage those war machines. If they do that, then they can the ambushers won't be able to hold the front and won't be able to push them into the river. And so 2 of them are inactive. They can just go up and sabotage. But one of them, when they get there, is on maneuvers. It's being tested out. There's people piloting it. So I basically treat it as this big iron golem thing. There's a monster in the Iron Heroes bestiary called the Iron Devil, and that's what I use for the stats basically. And so the players, a couple of them sneak up to sabotage it or disguise themselves as slaves to do it. And they get close. They start the fight. They set one of the legs, one of the active war machine's legs are covered in pitch and then set on fire, so it's stomping around. Its legs are burning up, but it's fucking iron, so it's not doing a whole lot of damage. It's doing some, but it's not doing a whole lot. But it's taking away every round, and so the fight's going on. But Aaron is just he just keeps getting stuck with arrows and just getting beaten up. Like there's this guy with a crowbar just beating his character up, and he cannot make. These are like
the dog punching incident again.
No, because the guy was hitting. He was just beating. 2 or 3 guys were beat the hell out of Aaron. He actually got down to 0 hit points. Somebody had to use first aid to heal him, or healing skill to heal him up to get him out to finish the fight. So it was a great fight. The players all loved it. It was just the right amount of balance for a fight. They just were cursing at me because like, God damn it, Ross, this is so.
Why are you making it difficult?
Yeah, exactly. But Aaron, so
he's a trooper.
Yeah, everyone else was scared to death of the scary war machine. So that's your
Fantastic.
update on that. And I think that kind of ends us up for RPPR episode 80, a good clean fight. And
because that's what we want.
This is Ross Payton, and
I'm Tom Church,
and we'll see you guys next time.
Laters.